It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Never was anything great achieved without danger. A prince must be a lion, but he must also know how to play the fox. Politics have no relation to morals. The end justifies the means. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. War is just when it is necessary. Arms are permissible when there is no hope except in arms. There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. It is better to be impetuous than cautious, because fortune is a woman, and if you wish to keep her under, you must beat and ill-use her. Before all else, be armed. There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others. Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. The prince must consider, as has been in part said before, how to avoid those things which will make him hated or contemptible, and as often as he shall have succeeded, he will have fulfilled his part, and he need not fear any danger in other reapproaches. Men are so simple and yield so readily to the desires of the moment that he who will trick will always find another who will suffer to be tricked. The more sand has escaped from our glass of our life, the clearer we should see through it. Hence it is to be remarked that in seizing a state, the usurper ought to examine closely into all those injuries which is necessary for him to inflict, and to do them all at once so as not to have to repeat them daily. When you disarm the people, you commence to offend them and show that you distrust them, either through cowardice or lack of confidence, and both of these opinions generate hatred. The injury that is to be done to a man ought to be of such a kind that one does not stand in fear of revenge. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. It is necessary to be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. The fact is that a man who wants to act virtuously in every way necessarily comes to a grief among so many who are not virtuous. It is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. The one who adapts his policy to the times prospers, and likewise that the one whose policy clashes with the demands of the times does not. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Whoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. The more sand that has escaped from the hourglass of our life, the clearer we should see through it. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is the necessity of the present. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. He who neglects what is done for what ought to be done sooner effects his ruin than his preservation. The greatest happiness of the greatest number is the foundation of morals and legislation. The wise man does not expose himself needlessly to danger, since there are few things for which he cares sufficiently, but he is willing in great crisis to give even his life, knowing that under certain conditions it is not worthwhile to live. All warfare is based on deception. Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. It is a sound maxim that reprehensible actions ought to be taken only when the necessity is apparent. He who has relied at least on fortune is established the strongest. It is not the well-being of individuals that makes cities great, but the well-being of the community. If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. It is easier to cope with a bad conscience than with a bad reputation. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Never was anything great achieved without danger. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. It is not the titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. He who is fixed to a star does not change his mind. All the states, all the dominions under those authority men have lived in the past and live now have been and are either republics or principalities. The reason there will be no change is because the people who stand to lose from change have all the power, and the people who stand to gain from change have none of the power.